7Sage LSAT podcast. We are your hosts. I am Alex.
I'm Bailey.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Perfect.
The timing was so bad.
I was kind of
Perfect.
like, should I sort of indicate or should I? And I was like, no. We're like, at this point,
No, you know me. I need nonverbal cues. Yeah, we're connected.
we figured it out.
Amazing.
Last week's was me and Henry, just me and Henry. This week.
Oh, okay. I was going to
Yeah.
make a comment about like how long it's been since Henry's been on the podcast.
It's been a
but
long time since the three of us were on. Yeah. But
Get the
here
crew
we
back
are.
together.
Yeah, we gotta get the band back together. But here we are. And we have a topic that hits close to home today. We've been sort of interviewing people on and off about their own LSAT journeys, 7Sage users, and today we're going to talk to our very own Bailey about kind of like a cautionary tale, what not to do.
Exactly. The LSAT, what not to do, is what we'll title this episode, perhaps.
Here's
not.
The thing. It's not, there's a lot to learn from it. There's a lot of good points, but I think Bailey would be the first to say that, like, obviously you ended up with a great score. It took you way longer and way more, way longer than it had to, right?
Right. And way longer than I thought it was going to also. Like, I came into this test so cocky. I was like, oh, cool.
Let's start at
a month.
Let's start at the beginning. Yeah, let's start at the beginning. Start at the beginning, because we're already starting at the beginning. So yeah, what you made the decision. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts were I should try to go to law school. What's my first step?
Yeah. How
about back do I have to go?
Just the LSAT. You're deciding to take the LSAT. What's your plan or lack thereof?
Okay. So I Google, like, what do you do to go to law school? So it's the LSAT. Then I Google, what's the LSAT? And then, well, actually, one of the first things I Googled was just how long should you study for the LSAT? And I kept getting a consistent about 3 months or longer online. And that was the first piece of advice that I just did not listen to. I was like, nope, there's no way. I'm going to do it in 1 month because I am really good at test taking, I had decided. Which, I mean, I'm objectively better at standardized test taking, but not the LSAT. Oh my God, it was bad. And so I basically took my very first test that I had officially signed up for blind. I mean, I had seen one practice test, maybe another one, or maybe just like random questions from another PT before. I just did not know what I was doing. And then I took the test.
Did you do a blind diagnostic before that, or no?
I did. Like, I think I did, but I don't even remember what I got as a score. I think it was on Khan Academy, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Huh. And then so basically, like, you go into the test having probably taken one test and not
just
done
not
much else.
Knowing what I'm doing. Yeah, and thinking also like, oh, this is gonna be so much easier on test day. You know, the adrenaline will be pumping. Like, I'll just be able, because I was thinking, like a lot of people do, that my biggest issue was timing, and if I could just figure out the timing, then I was getting all the questions right. Mm-hmm. And of course, I hadn't done much on time practice to even figure out where I was at untimed. I wouldn't have been at that place that I was thinking I was at untimed.
Yeah, let's actually. I feel like this is a good one lens that we can use is kind of like, as we go, sort of correcting the myths that maybe you fell prey to. So when you say that, when you say like you were under the impression that it was just a timing issue, like, what do you think now when people say that? Where do you think that? What do you think? What do you hear when people say that?
Right. Yeah. My very first question whenever somebody's like, okay, I really just need to get the timing down, is like, literally just, where are you at untimed practice wise? Like, what's your level of confidence at? What's your level of accuracy? Are you where you want to be mentally without timing? And then, let's start to taper you down. I also start to ask, like, just how long have you been studying? Not that, like, I feel like different people can get to different progress levels with different amounts of time studying, but if you're in your first month or two and you really are just sold on the idea that your full problem with this test is timing, chances are it's not. We got to figure out where you're at untimed first. And then, that's going to be the indicator as to whether timing is your problem or not. Like, can't argue with the facts. You do it untimed. If you're still not getting those questions right, then let's start with understanding. Totally. And that was what I really needed to do. That's part of why my timeline took so long, because I was doing the opposite.
So yeah, so I think when people come, it's very, very common, right? It's very common that you hear people say, like, my issue is timing. And, like, I get it. Like, you're not wrong in that you don't have enough time to do this test, right? Like
Right.
that's totally true. Like it is not a reasonable amount of time. You're not given a reasonable amount of time to do any of these tasks, I would say, to the best of your ability. But again, those are the rules of the game. It's just like, it's sort of like,
Right.
oh, my only issue in soccer is I can't use my hands. Well, that's the rules. Like that's the exercise. You know what I mean? It's like it.
Yeah, you got some good sports metaphors.
I
Yes.
just like thinking
No, you're
that one
right.
because it's like sometimes when with this test where you think we think about things that are sort of like, well, that's like unique to this, or that's like not, that's like cheap or not
Right.
fair or
No.
whatever. And it's like, it's just the rules. The rules are the
Yeah.
rules, right? Which is okay. So taking a step back, totally understand when people say my issue is timing, right? But you got to dig deeper. You're doing yourself a disservice if you just say, okay, so the solution is I got to get faster, right? Because, well, okay, how, right? And the way you get faster is through like general understanding and ability, right? Is doing like deeper work to understanding to understand these things, and then they become faster. Just as, you know, I mean, yeah, I'm just going straight to other sports metaphors, so I'll skip them. But you know, if you want to do something quickly, it's not just it's and you don't yet know how to do it well.
Right.
The answer is first learn how to do it well, right? And then try and speed it up. You know. Anyways, unless you're just trying to do a fast bad job, which I always compare it to like
Exactly.
when I was learning to type, and I think I've told you this. There was a typing program or like it was like, well, it wasn't an app. There weren't apps back then. They were called
No, no,
programs.
no. There weren't
Um, uh,
apps.
so like
Was it on those like really old big computers, like the?
like what do you mean? It was a desktop for sure. I didn't have a
Yeah,
laptop.
like one
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
desktops though that's not just like a flat screen.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely not. No.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
So there was the thing where you had to like, it would measure your speed and your accuracy. And so it would give you a sentence and you had to type it, right? And I was like, oh, if I just mash all of the keys, like it
Yeah.
picks up if you're doing the correct one, right? So if I just sort of just like mash the keys, like my words per minute is going to be insanely high. So I did that, and then I showed it to my dad, and he was like, "You have like a 1% accuracy." Like, it also measures your accuracy too at the same
You
time.
don't know how to type.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going there is like, you know, speed and accuracy are both important, and we don't want to
Right.
just finish this test quickly, right? We want to finish it doing a good job. All right, let's get back to your story. Let's get back to your
Right.
story.
Well, you know that a small little piece in my story that has nothing to do with the LSAT is I don't know how to type. So I just wanted to bring that up. Anyways,
Fair enough. That's part of your longer story.
that's
Yeah.
that's my deep roots. Okay, so back to the LSAT. Slow down to speed up. Basically, like I don't even remember at what point I learned that, but I do feel like it was a big turning point in my process where I was like, okay, calm down, girl. Like, number one, you got to dial back a little bit, figure out what you're actually doing strategy wise, figure out what steps are going to get you to the right answer. I think that a big factor in that was probably me just spending a lot more time wrong answer journaling because I just wasn't letting myself do that before. I was trying to move on from whatever I saw as fast as possible. I mean, I would still think through it, but I wouldn't actually spend the time to fully articulate my thoughts and then also leave myself with a takeaway of what am I going to do better next time. As soon as I started doing that, I realized a lot of my takeaways were just like, you got to figure out some sort of way to read these words correctly first, you know, and sometimes it was like, go back to the basics, figure out what sufficient is, what is necessary, like understand these relationships. But a lot of it was just like, you got to slow down. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should listen. So then I
Yeah.
finally listened.
But so you take the test and you don't do very well, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. My
Uh,
first test. Wait, do I share my scores or no? I
I
forgot.
don't know. What do you think?
Okay. I always
Say
do
it.
in live class.
Yeah. Why not?
My very first test I took, I got a 156. I do not remember what my first PT was, but it was somewhere around there, basically.
Which is good.
Yeah.
You know, like for like it's totally a decent score, and it essentially functions as a blind diagnostic test, right? So basically, you have a
Right.
156 on your diagnostic. So you go up from 156 to 175. It took you how long to do that?
1.5 years.
Yeah, a year and a half. And how many tests did you take?
4 full
Yeah.
LSATs.
And I think one thing we were talking about before, one thing you didn't do is you didn't let's talk about first what you didn't do, and then we can talk about sort of the lessons you learned along the way. Like
Yeah,
going back, like where would you have started if you if you could, if you could go back in time and condense
Seems like a
that from a
leading
year and a half?
question.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, honestly, there was so many moments, even during that year and a half, when I like knew that I just needed some sort of curriculum. I was entirely trying to, like, I always talk about it. Like, when I was growing up, I just was so stubborn. I really wanted to figure out how to solve a Rubik's Cube without ever learning an algorithm of how to do it. And so I would just mess around with my Rubik's Cube all the time. It took so long of trial and error to maybe figure out how to do one side. And then I couldn't figure it out past that. So all this to say, I feel like that's pretty similar to how I approached the LSAT. I was like, oh, cool. You know what? I'm going to figure it out on my own. Like, I only trust myself. I didn't want to trust somebody else's concept
Yeah.
of what the things were. And I just didn't understand that I did not have enough background knowledge going into this to be able to build out my own curriculum. Like, I didn't even try to do something like that.
Yeah.
But what were you going to say?
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just like, I totally agree. I kind of had a similar mindset at the beginning, and I think a lot of people do. And the thing is, like, you can do a lot on your own. It's going to take you forever. It's going to take you so long, like it did for Bailey. So, like,
Right.
It's not to say that, like, you need to do it one way or another in order to get a certain score. I mean, I will say, for most people, to get anywhere close to where you ended up, you need a curriculum, right? Like, it's, but it's not to say it's impossible to get there on your own. It just is going to take you a very long time. And most people who start this are not looking to spend a year and a half studying for it, So
neither was I.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like, a lot of people just don't even end up doing that. Like, they just stop before. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're trying to spend less than that amount of time, I would definitely recommend starting off with a curriculum. I do remember looking at 7Sage's curriculum and just being like, oh, that's going to take me way too long. And that is so funny and ironic looking back now, because it would have taken me a lot less time than the alternative. But I just, hindsight is 20/20, right? Like, I had no idea. Trust me now. Like, you guys can now listen.
Totally. Well, and for the two of us, like, we've done this long enough on both sides, right? I've like taught the LSAT for much longer than I studied for it. So, like, we're not just talking from our personal experiences, right? Now we're also saying, like, because I don't think I did this test very well either. Like, I did use 7Sage, so, like, it took me a lot less time than you, but, like, I didn't do it in the way that I now tell people to do it, which is really, like, the lucky thing is, like, it's how it's laid out on the website. We're not, nothing we're saying is it like, the largest message we have is just like, hey, like, and just do what it tells you to do, right? Like, that works. And even, listen, like, I always say, like, obviously we are partial to 7Sage. I studied with it. We work here for a reason. But, like, the most important thing is that you have a curriculum, that you have a thing and that works for you, and you, like, push yourself in the hands of that curriculum. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. Like, it's just it. And that's the thing, is people see this and they're like, wow, this is going to take me so long. Like, take it from Bailey. Like, yeah, it takes months for sure, but it doesn't take a year and a half, right?
Exactly.
So, like, it takes you less time to do the curriculum. It just, the difference is you can kind of, like, when you're trying to do it on your own, like, you feel like the finish line is, like, right around the corner. And when you're standing at the beginning of a curriculum, like, you see a finish line that's way down the road. So you can see the distance, and it's a long distance. So you're like, no. The thing is, if you're doing it on your own, it's going to take longer. You just can't see how long
like,
it's
one
going
of
to take.
those is an accurate view of reality. The other one, just you're kind of in the cave. So
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so you didn't do the curriculum. What were you doing in terms of practice tests?
I honestly took a ton of practice tests on Law Hub. I would try to, I don't even remember what exactly I was doing. I would try to take, like, I did hear somewhere that you shouldn't take too many PTs back to back. I'm sure I didn't listen to that advice all the time. I mean, like, I remember specifically one time right before my second test, I took, like, 4 PTs back to back the week of the LSAT. I love sharing that one as a what not to do. Please.
Well, so let's talk about that. Why not?
Oh, okay, perfect. Because it really is just not going to be the thing that you need mentally. I'd say that your last week before the LSAT is you're looking to cement confidence. You're just looking to go through the motions, confirm to yourself that you know exactly what steps to follow whenever the test gets hard. And you really don't need to be proving yourself or like be just trying to like put all these skills to the test over and over and over on full PTs, especially if you're going into those PTs looking for redemption. And that's what I was looking for. I'd taken like a PT maybe a week and a half or a week before my actual test. And I was like, okay, this is supposed to be my last PT. Like, let's just see what happens. I got about 10 points, if I remember correctly, lower than I had been averaging or like had expected to, wanted to, whatever it was. It was just super disappointing. And then I panicked and I just was like, I have to get myself back up there. And then, of course, every day after that, I took another PT, score went down. Score did not go up. I was hoping it would go up.
Yeah.
No, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's just like mentally not helpful. I think a lot of my process, like looking back on what would have been more beneficial for me throughout it, was just like kind of a stepping back and reflecting, is what I'm doing right now helpful or not helpful? And maybe you don't know all of that in the moment, but even just like, do I have takeaways that I can articulate after every day that I'm studying? Am I able to, talk myself through the progress that I've made? Do I know what to do better next time? All of those things are ways that you can just kind of like measure your progress, make sure that you're going in a good direction. I wasn't even doing that for most of my studying.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think there's like two lessons there, right? Because it's like, you definitely shouldn't be doing that the week of your test. And you also like shouldn't be doing that at any point, right? Like you shouldn't be taking all those PTs. We say like one PT a week, no more, no less. And that,
right.
We also say, don't start that until you finish the core curriculum, because you're just wasting those PTs. Like first of all, like you have a finite number of PTs. And two, they're just like not doing anything for you. It's you don't know how, you don't know save them until you have the foundation.
Right.
Not to touch on my story. Maybe next episode we'll the tables will.
I'll
will
interview
turn.
you.
Yeah. But a little preview. I mean, I definitely did that all the time. I took PTs one after the other. Like I think there was maybe a day where I took two in the same day. Because I was just like. Because one, I kind of enjoyed doing I enjoyed taking PTs way more than I enjoyed like other forms of studying. Like I found that to be like, because the PTs felt like sort of like a game to me in a way. Like I'm very competitive. I like seeing a score. I like gauging my progress. And so to me, it was like, I wasn't thinking about how to progress. I was just thinking, I want to see progress. I want to see a number that's higher than the last one. It almost felt a little like almost like I was sitting in front of a slot machine. Not that I enjoy that. I don't enjoy that, but it sort of was the same psychology of like, oh, like just one more time. Just let me spin it again and see what comes up.
Yes. Yeah.
So our advice, what's your advice? Like, what is the way to do it? One PT a week, like.
Yeah, one PT a week. It's just a lot more about what you're doing in between PTs. And I do think I figured, like, not necessarily that entire idea out, but I did figure out how to start doing smaller sets of problems, like drills for myself, and giving myself different strategy twists, or kind of creating drills that would help me train myself to get better at timing or better accuracy or certain things. But so anyways, like my overall advice now is like focus on one PT a week, handful of full timed or untimed sections, depending on where you're at in your studying, peppered throughout the week. No more than 3 or 5. I'd say you're overdo it past that. And then a couple of targeted drills each day on top of that. So those might be focused on timing. They might be focused on certain question types. They might be focused on a certain strategy. Maybe it's all of the above. But really just making sure that you have, here's another thing that I didn't do until way later in my process, have small reachable goals every week. I just was like, goals schmoles, who cares? My goal is
goal is like
get a 180.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whatever it was. Yeah. I don't even remember what my goal was, but it was just like, I want to crush this test. And I wasn't literally thinking about the how I was going to get there. I was just thinking about the end goal. And I think that happens to a lot of people, but what's going to be helpful is thinking about the how and articulating it week after week, holding yourself to a goal that you can get to.
I think people don't understand the purpose of that. And I think some people think that it's like, oh, well, then I'm like not shooting for the best that I could possibly do.
Right. Yes. And it's
Think
like,
of
no, if you do better, that's bonus. Like, it's
also,
going to be more
yeah,
helpful. Sorry, go.
totally. No. You're right. But it's like we also have macro goals and micro goals. So like, it's important to have a goal score, and it's like, okay, maybe that goal score is a 180. For most people, it shouldn't be. And I don't mean
Right.
because most people can't score a 180, even though like statistically it is a curve test. So 180 is like,
Right.
it's
Like that
like
literally would
by
not be able to happen.
definition,
More than
it can't
50% of the
happen.
people could
Right,
not.
right. But that's not my point. My point isn't that any one person can't score a 180. It's that like, well, okay, but you'll accept lower than a 180, right? Like, what's the score? And
Right.
it's not to say like, so it's just like a little bit more complicated than that, right? It's like, where's the like range of these scores? Like, I would be happy with, like, where's the thing that you'd be like, that you'd be happy with, right? You'd accept,
Right.
you wouldn't want to retake it. And if it's 180, I would think long and hard about whether that's true.
Right. That's like
right?
so extreme. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
kind of like what I held or like, I don't know. I just had this idea in the back of my mind where if I wasn't shooting for a 180, then I'm doing myself a disservice
Exactly.
or something.
Me too.
Or like I'm not living up to my full potential. And it's like, whoa. Is that mindset helpful? Like, again, going back to well, is this getting me towards the place that I want to be? Not at all. It's getting me further away from it because you're just that much added pressure, at least on myself, was really making myself change my strategies up and time practice, which then made my scores go lower. And it was just like too much pressure, not working.
Yeah, so that's like the macro goal, but then also what we're talking about too is like breaking that goal down into bite-sized pieces, right? You cannot go into every week, into every drill, into every practice test just thinking I want my goal score because, not to bring it back to sports, right? But if you're like trying to run like a 5-minute whatever, I don't know where I'm going with this.
That's really fast, a 5-minute mile.
Yeah. So if you're trying to run a 5-minute mile, right, that isn't your goal from day one. You're not like, well, this mile I'm going to do it, right? You recognize that that's a very lofty goal, and you're going to like break it down and like really try it, and
honestly,
work
my
your way
goal
there.
is just to run a mile.
Well, right, exactly. What?
That's my literal goal is just to run a mile.
Yeah. But the point is like this test is like just as, I mean, if you think about how long people train for this test, like it's not that dissimilar from like marathons, it's actually like, and you should treat it that way, right? So your goal for every day is not just to get your goal time on the race, right? It's breaking it down. How do I get there? And I think we understand that when we think about physical goals, because it's like, well, I'm out of shape. Like I can't do that right away. And we just don't quite recognize that this is the same. I mean, someone asked me the other day, like, how would I do on the test right now? And I was like, not well. I would not do well. And it's not because I can't. Like, I know that I can. I've done it. I've done well. But like, I'm not studying for the test, and I'm also not teaching the test right now because like, I'm not teaching it in the way that I used to, right? I'm teaching it like this and more like holistically, but I'm not like doing as many problems as I once did. And so like I'm out of practice. Like I would not be able to do very well if I just sat down and take the test today, because I'm out of practice. I'm out of shape. It's like, I also like haven't been running very much. So if I ran, I wouldn't expect myself to run very fast,
So what I'm hearing is that I would crush you in a practice LSAT right now, but you'd honestly still probably beat me in the mile. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm not super worried about that, but
Perfect.
You never know.
Perfect.
But what? Okay, so where did we leave off?
That's a question for another person. That's not me.
You were like, okay, so we talked about PTs. We talked about how to do that.
Right.
What I mean, so let's talk about like, okay, so granted, like you did not have the process that you would recommend to other people. Like what worked for you? What did you figure out that did help you along the way?
Right. So as soon as I started getting more serious about my studying and a little bit more organized, that was when, I don't know if I was like thoroughly making small reachable goals each week, but I was at least finding an area of focus each week. And then I remember that I would drill a lot of either like a single question type, or something that I started liking to do a lot on my own was just look at parallels, look at bridges between question types and see like what different question types can all be approached with the same first few steps. That's when I started getting really into, I mean, just approaching question types the way that I teach my spotting the gap class now, where it's like flaw, strength and weaken, sufficient assumption, necessary assumption, pseudo-sufficient assumption, all of those. You want to just start by spotting that gap or hole, which I think that a lot of that was just like overall strategy was getting a little bit tighter. I was realizing which things got me to the right answers. And then I would bring it all back together for a PT, probably, I don't know if it was weekly, but probably a little bit more structured at that point.
Yeah. And you're still finding that structure over, again,
right,
18 months or so.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Well,
18 months. Thank you.
I just did a little mental math. What else? Yeah. So like, I guess, I think a lot of people feel the way that you did at the beginning, right? Like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it. And it's like, listen, like, there's no one size fits all approach. Like, it's not, you know, when we say like follow a path or a curriculum, like there's variation within that. Like there's ways to adapt it to your needs and your own style. So I think, you know, listen, I understand the temptation to do this on your own in your own way. And you should just know where that's reasonable and where it isn't. Right. And listen, like like I say all the time, sometimes people in like classes or, you know, in-person courses, they're like, what happens if I don't do the home, I mean, in courses or whatever. I'm like, what happens if you don't do the homework? Nothing. Like it's
right,
I don't
like,
care.
I'm not going to do anything. I can't punish you.
No,
you're going to realize
you're an adult, and like you're here for a reason. Like you're here because you want to be a lawyer. You're here, you know, you're here because you want to get a certain score on this test, which ultimately is because you want to be a lawyer. So like, and that's for you. Like this is not elementary school. Like I'm not gonna, like, you're not gonna get in trouble. It's just this is the way that you can make this easier on yourself or harder on yourself, or succeed or possibly fail. Like, you know, when it comes to, should I reinvent the wheel? Should I do this like completely of my own design? Like, yeah, there's ways to make that work. In general, it's going to take you a whole lot longer, or it's not going to work. You know?
Right.
That's
I
what
so badly wanted to reinvent the wheel. And honestly, I kind of came
Same.
up with a pseudo wheel by the end of it. That was just
yeah. Well, it's like, I think,
past, but
I mean, I think
it just took so long, like we keep saying.
Yeah, like for me personally, like it was like, yeah, like eventually I sort of my own discovery was like, I should be doing these PTs once a week. I mean, I wish someone had told me that. It
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I wish I'd just listened when people told me that at the beginning. It would be a lot easier, you know? I also
That's the story
think
of my life, though. How many things have I learned the hard way? How many things have you learned the hard way? I know we're both like that.
I've learned a lot of things the hard way. I think maybe I'm a little bit better now, just through trial and error. No, you don't think so? Your face is telling me no.
You're making a comparative for you versus me. No. You're totally better now. You've grown.
Yeah. No. I would never. I mean, but no, I would never. No.
Whatever.
No. But like, yeah, the other thing is, like, I mean, it's something that we talk about literally all the time, but like finding people who are doing this at the same time as you.
Yes. Wait, we can talk about that. I mean, I probably talked about that similarly, like on the first podcast that we did about finding community, but I was really stubborn about just not wanting to reach out to, like, I had friends that were studying for the LSAT even. I just didn't even want to reach out to them for help, because part of it was like the, you know, complex where I was like, what if they're doing better than me? I don't know. I don't want to like deal with that. I knew some of them were doing better than me. So I was like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the other part was just like, well, I mean, a lot of it probably had to do with that, because I was also scared to, you know, show myself struggling in front of them. And then it's like, no, everybody's struggling. I think as soon as I started to reach out, I was like, oh, you know, regardless of where our scores are at, like we can each teach from or learn from and teach each other. And then also, there's just so many overlaps between what you feel like maybe you're the only person experiencing something, and it's just like, this test is the end of the world. It's not just you.
The other thing is, like, you can find new friends for the LSAT. Like,
that too, it's just exactly, even if you don't know people. Yeah.
I can understand not wanting to do this with people who you have like long outside friendships with, because like, yeah, it is complicated. Like, you don't really want to necessarily like have that like direct comparison in front of you or whatever, but like through live class, through like any other, through Discord servers, through whatever, like finding other people who maybe you only knew through this test. And like, we've seen it so many times, those like blossom into like actual friendships, which is amazing. But like, even if it doesn't get to that point, it still is like really helpful to have like an LSAT buddy, for accountability, yeah, exactly. So yeah. All right. You made it. Ultimately, you made it. It was a long, twisting path.
I'm so glad I didn't give up. I mean, I think I literally did give up a few times, but like I kept going. I'm so glad I kept going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So listen, it's like I think there's a lot of I'm glad we structured it the way we did, because it's like we got to see how you got here, and then also like pausing along the way to be like, yeah, and how could you have done this a little bit? How could you have sped this up a little bit? How could you have made it easier on yourself? Because here's the thing. You cannot make this process easy. It is hard. This test is hard.
Yeah,
it's going to take a long time. Like, I wish I could just make it easy for everyone, but it's not. It's not, right? It is a hard test.
Right.
Like, you can make it way easier. You can make it like not so disruptive or upsetting or long or anything, right? You can take the steps to make this as easy as possible for yourself. And you can have somewhat of a gratifying experience. This test teaches you a lot of things that are applicable outside of this test. Absolutely. I 100% believe that. Maybe we can do an episode about that. How the lessons of the LSAT apply elsewhere.
First lesson is still slow, smooth, fast.
There you go. Well, that's a little teaser.
We'll get right into it. Yay.
All right. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Bailey, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Alex, for soliciting my story.
100%. Anytime. All right. Talk to you, the listener, soon. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you soon. Watch us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, and subscribe. Comment. If you have questions, comment.
Oh, they could comment. That's easier than emailing, but you can also email.
You can also email. No one emails us. I don't understand. Podcast at 7Sage.com. But comment. Comment on YouTube.
Comment on YouTube.
We'll respond there. All right. That's all we've got. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.